Hey there, welcome in or welcome back. My name is Avril, and in this corner of the internet, we chat about writing, life, and whatever else comes to mind. And today I am debunking what is probably the most common piece of writing advice you will be given along the way. And that is writing every single day, no excuses, no exceptions. To be fair, there is merit behind this advice of writing every single day. We all know that the book will not write itself, and in order to make progress on the book, you need to actually write the book. And I will be the first person to admit that the longer you are away from your writing project, the harder it can be to reorient yourself, and the longer it can take to build up that momentum again. But that being said, writing every day does also have its drawbacks and its consequences. And in today's video, I want to address a couple of those. So without further ado, let's get into it. Overall, I think the main reason that writing every day is not the best writing advice out there is just a simple fact that it doesn't account for everything else in your life. I know a lot of us aspire to be full time writers, but the majority of us do maintain a day job alongside our writing. Perfect example, I work at an escape room and we are entering our summer hours next week. And that means my available writing time will be reduced a little bit. So I've had to shift things around in order to accommodate that and wanting to make progress on my book and other things I have going on. So, like I mentioned in a recent video, one of those accommodations is putting my blog on a partial hiatus. That way, I'm not worried about having to have a new post up every single weekend when I know that it may not be feasible with my new schedule. As much as I love my blog, my fiction does need to come first. And for many writers out there, writing every day, working on their book every day, isn't going to be feasible with their own work schedule, whether or not they're going into extended hours or just have the same schedule year round. And that can also hold true for younger writers who are in school still, or maybe are in college and have that part time job alongside their academics and any other extracurriculars they might be involved with. Take this next one with a grain of salt because I'm not a parent. But the advice to write every day without failure doesn't account for things like childcare or other obligations you may have if you have a dependent. It also doesn't account for medical things, whether that be the common cold or the flu or a chronic illness. When my long COVID was at its absolute worst, there was pretty much a solid year where I wasn't writing because I just couldn't. And there were definitely days where it had me questioning if I was even really meant to be a writer because I couldn't pick up that pen. I developed a few neurological issues because of long COVID, and I remember this incident where I was trying to pick up a pencil and it wasn't feeling right. And I had a full sobbing breakdown because I couldn't hold a pencil because it didn't feel right. It wasn't that I couldn't grasp it, but it was just that it didn't feel right. And I was bawling my eyes out. My mom basically throws me into the car and takes me to Walmart at like 11 o'clock at night to buy me those kindergarten pencils because that is all I could really hold. And I was just really frustrated with myself and God, this is so stupid, but I was really doubting myself because I couldn't write and I was having these borderline seizures where I wasn't able to move or speak for up to an hour at a time. So there goes any dictation that could be an option there. So, yes, basically I would have these full body tremors and the tremors themselves were only a couple seconds at a time, no more than like 30 seconds usually. But then the come down from that would be I would just be locked in my body, unable to move or speak, fully aware of what was going on around me, but trapped in my own body. And those days were the hardest. And so I had a lot of that imposter syndrome because I physically could not write. And it just, it really messed with me. So between that and the brain fog and the memory issues I was having, it just wasn't working. And I think a lot of the guilt and imposter syndrome that I was feeling at the time was driven in part by that you need to write every day mantra. Sorry about that emotional tangent. Oh my God. Um, anyway, the point is the advice of writing every single day, it doesn't account for life. And while it is a good objective to fit your writing into your life, there are those things that are going to come up that just throw all those plans out the window. And that's not just about the mundane things like your day job or schoolwork or chronic illness, but it can also be about the happier things like going on a vacation or attending a wedding or just other things that might come up along the way that take away from your available writing time. And let's face it, there are things in life that are more important than writing. General human upkeep and self care, because self care is not selfish. And if you're not taking care of yourself, how do you expect to take care of your writing? I think I was most consistent about that need to write every day between high school and college. And that led to a lot of isolation because I was prioritizing my writing over everything else. And I mean, everything else. So I did find that I was unintentionally closing myself off and missing out on a lot of things because I needed to be writing. I needed to be doing this. I needed to be doing that. And I was kind of withdrawn in a lot of ways. And I do go into more detail about this in my blog posts about the age of Scorpius and Milo Winter and all of that drama that was going on at the time because I can relate to a lot of what he was saying at the time about how this was my everything. And I, now looking back, have a lot of regrets about that because I missed out on a lot. And it also doesn't help that the project I was so devoted to back then has been shelved, at least for now, possibly forever. So it kind of makes you wonder what it was all for anyway. But I'll have that blog post linked below if you want to check it out. I think the common understanding of write every day as a piece of writing advice relates mostly to the act of writing itself and adding on to your manuscript. But the thing is, writing a book is so much more than the act of writing itself. If you're a plotter, for example, you might be doing a lot of work before you even begin writing with all the world building and character development before you actually dive into the writing itself. There's also things like research, editing, and revisions. And when you get closer to publishing, you'll also have to do a lot of the marketing as well, because while it is a common misconception that a traditionally published author doesn't have to market their own book, they actually do. And that can be a whole separate video for a different day. Long story short, writers also have to do a lot of their own marketing, if not all of it. And if you're an indie author, chances are you're also handling your own cover design, whether that is doing it yourself or hiring an artist to do it for you, and formatting and pretty much the entire publication process. In the grand scheme of things, yes, none of this can happen without the book being written. But if you have multiple projects going on, or you have one book coming out and you're working on the next one in the series or your next standalone, one does not completely erase the other existing. You'll still have all these things going on and needing to be taken care of. It just kind of feels like writing every day doesn't account for everything else that goes into publishing a book. And as a currently unpublished author, I am sure I'm only scratching the surface here, and I'm going to have quite a few rude awakenings down the road. The other big consequence of writing every day that I wanted to bring up in this video is that it almost guarantees burnout in one way or another. We've all had those days where we are face to face with a blank page, and no matter how hard we are trying, we cannot get the words to go. And when you feel so compelled to write every day and make that progress every day, it can lead to a lot of burnout. And I think that's why so many writers do struggle with NaNoWriMo or experience that crash afterward. Because after pushing yourself day after day after day, it can hit that point where your brain just can't anymore and you do need to rest. But because we're told left and right to write every day, no failure, no exception, no excuses, it can be really internally devastating when we do have that day where we haven't written, especially when we have been going and going and going. And that's where a lot of those guilty feelings arise from, because we're told over and over and over that we need to be writing no matter what. And when we physically cannot because we are so mentally fatigued and exhausted, it just hits harder. We've just built up this momentum that makes the crash even harder when it does hit. Meanwhile, hitting the pause button on your writing and stepping away from it for a little bit does allow you to recharge and regroup. So when you do come back to it, you've got a new perspective and fresh eyes and can reassess everything and hopefully get over that hurdle and keep making progress again. Now, even though everything that I'm saying in this video is an exception to writing every day, there are exceptions to everything that I'm saying about that exception to writing every day. If you are in that flow state and you have that ability to keep going and going and going, you have that momentum, by all means, do. Especially if you've hit that creative stride and are just getting over writer's block, or you've just found the pace that works really well for you, by all means, keep that up. And as an unpublished writer, I also have what could arguably be called a luxury of not having to deal with contractual obligations or deadlines and all those things that I will hopefully someday get to deal with as a traditionally published author. Now, that may very well change. And in a lot of ways, fingers crossed, I hope it does. I hope I do have to eventually deal with all those contractual obligations. And I know that when I do reach that point, I am going to have to shift my approach to writing. I am fully aware of that. Across the board, my advice when it comes to the advice of writing every day is not to fixate on writing every day, as in the act of writing every day, but doing something writing related every day and being more mindful about it. That might be as simple as putting together the playlist and listening to it on your way to work. It could just be baking your main character's favorite treat, and it could very well be those days of 8-hour writing marathons, if that is your style. But it's also about being aware of your own limitations and honoring those. Writing a book is already hard enough as it is, but it becomes even harder when you aren't taking care of yourself and you aren't giving yourself that ability to rest. And I guess that's where I'll leave this video off for today, but before I sign off, I do just want to say a huge thank you to everyone that has been checking out my video on ellipsis and showing it all the love. The reception for this video has surpassed everything I could have imagined for it. And while the numbers are definitely a lot smaller compared to other YouTubers out there, it is really exciting to see the number, as we like to say at work, number go up. And I just cannot thank you all enough. So, thank you for being here. Thank you for spending a little bit of your day here with me in this corner of the internet. Be sure to like and subscribe and do all the things for more writing, life, and whatever else comes to mind. And let me know in the comments, do you write every day, or do you give yourself that period of rest in between? Tell me all about your writing habits down in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.